This is season 4 of our podcast, and this is our second episode. We've no idea what we're going to be talking about because we've only
I
just.
already know. I already know. Yeah.
Okay, well then, fire away because I think that you're fired up in what you want to say, and I can just respond to what you're talking about because I
I,
think that's. And again, we'll include everything we've just done here because I think
yeah.
it's just an opening because I know what's inspiring you at the moment then, Garvin.
Well, you used the right language there just now. Actually, I would have the perfect words is I'm all fired up,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to be all. I'm trying to put a fire under myself. I actually use that language of, I was just down the bottom of the road a few minutes ago. I just ordered some materials for a project with an artist friend, and what I've been talking about this art project or this project for 5 years now since.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It's let's say call it Project 52 for a second because it's inception, or where this the universe started to talk to me was when I was 52 years of age, 5 years ago, same time as I met yourself, and I went on this change, this journey. Now, in that timeline, we've been going slow, fast, 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 slow, based on what was going on. But literally, I made a decision in the last number of days to put a fire under myself, or to get all. I need everyone needs to be all fired up about their passion projects.
Well, can I just ask you, because I know that 5 years ago we got the paintings which we used as backdrops, and that was done by
Yeah.
Will. Are you being fired up to do paintings yourself?
Yes.
Right.
Now there's the thing. The paintings.
Okay.
Now those paintings manifested themselves into existence to be our, let's say, brand journey backdrop for our theory behind 52 Jokers Wild, which was
Yeah.
effectively being able to change ourselves and get ourselves out of a silo, go on a new journey, go learn something, go beyond the edge of our not the edge of reason, but more our comfort zone, and grow. And effect, so those paintings came into existence under that heading,
Yeah.
and then out of that journey came ND, our first about 140 podcasts before that, but that was only leading to our first shorts.
Yeah.
And our first short, Near Death, or ND, which you wrote yourself, in there are another 5 paintings that manifest themselves
Yes.
into the film. And these are 7 foot by 4 foot in height, fabulous looking paintings by by my artist friend Sid Evans. And that's the chap I was chatting to 5 minutes ago, because I said this is the scale I was envisioning, but it was
Yeah.
just a multiple of that. So we went down to the shop and into the hardware store, and effectively we ordered 52 big 8 foot MDF boards, and the guy behind the counter was going, "What the hell is this for?"
Yeah.
And so I said, "It's for an art installation. That's just, for want of a better word, it's for an art installation. I do not know what's going to be on these things, but what I do know is I have to stop talking about this idea and put it into existence." And what just putting that order in was a commitment to bring it from idea to its first manifestation of 52 framed,
Yeah.
canvases, hung blank, painted white, and ready to go on its next journey. So it's this ideation journey to manifestation to be able to go on the real journey,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to being an idea.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm fascinated because I mean, at the back of the log cabin, I've been buying pencils and paintbrushes and paints and acrylics and all kinds of crazy stuff over the last few years, and I'm kind of going, and there have been blocks because I was part of a men's shed initially at one point, and I was trying to introduce that, and it kept getting blocked. I wasn't being allowed to do that kind of artwork or anything like that. I'm doing it through the storyboards at the
Yeah.
moment because of our little films.
No, this is so. I'm going to jump in for a second
Yeah.
and go. I know what my original idea was, or I thought it was, but I don't think it's that anymore. And actually, you just touched on it. It could just as easily be storyboards blown up, and this imagery again is an installation that has a double-sided coin. We don't know. I'm not going to say it's this or that or
Yeah.
the other. But what you asked me a question on the last question you asked was, "Am I going to be the artist on any of this?" I think it's like you said, we put ourselves in our film as the extra.
Yes.
There's nothing to say there won't be 52 artists and we may be one of them, or it might be, hell, we're all of them.
Well, don't forget in the so in ND, me and you were extras. We were extras in that movie. But in GVH, you became one of the lead characters. And that was important because you were worried about moving into that role because you were going to be working with uh, what you perceived to be professional actors, and you felt that, that imposter syndrome was starting to kick in. But we actually said, look, go for it, because when are you ever going to get a chance to do that? Because the world outside is actually stopping us from doing all the things that we love doing. It is deliberately preventing us, even trying to get the films made. But we are deliberately going off and making the films that we're doing, and deliberately doing what isn't
Deliberately
expected
doing. I
of
love
us.
that. We're deliberately doing.
Deliberately doing, yeah, and I think that's important because like, I mean, for me in ND and in GVH, I had the chance to compose music. And I'm kind of going, oh my God, all these years I've been saying, no, I'm not a musician, I'm not really into that, and I was always making little films, but I suddenly had the chance to explore the creativity within the music, and in the last one, which for the last, I just felt we needed to have a female voice, and the AI systems have now got to the point, not the AI did it, but it allowed me to use a female voice using my words to my music, and that allowed me to explore things. So in one sense, I'm really interested to find out from you what little ideas bubble up that sort of get translated onto that canvas.
Now, the strange thing is you just use another couple of words which I'm resonating, which is this is, we're trying to, I think what's starting to happen is we're creating our own artist platform to basically funnel our own creativity and others. Because we have to start with our own. It's not that we're going to try and funnel other. If we can't funnel our own, then we're not going to be the best to funnel others' creativity
Yeah,
because they have ownership of their ideas and they're going to like or dislike and then not let go at certain speeds of things. Whereas before I wasn't starting, it began maybe because of imposter syndrome to go, I am not an artist under maybe my perceived definition of fine art. But my whole family are fine artists.
yeah,
In a sense of my father was a fine artist. My two sisters went off and studied at the two art schools like in Ireland. Both got a 1-1 in fine art. They're continuously honed their art ever since. So the word art and artist to me is a skill set that is able to draw, etch, paint, and be this artist definition.
yeah.
Whereas what I've realized is to me now that's a functional definition of art. Whereas I am exploding and have been exploding with ideas since the day I was born, and they just come in and out of the ether, the mist of the mind, and they never get to manifest in reality.
Well,
Whereas that's the journey I'm now on. The
yeah.
journey to be the creative and be the artist is to bring things into being. They do not need to be perfect, but they're now your art, your creation,
Well,
or hopefully ours.
yeah, I wonder, because you've used a word just there, functionality. You've used and you use it constantly with me. Uh, right,
You're just a functional
functional
so and
person.
so. Yeah.
Right.
No. We know you're the creative, and your tool is functionality. Yeah.
But I wonder if because one of the things you were talking about there was this, that there is that imposter syndrome. You see other people as the creatives, you see other people, and yet we've managed to get you in the last 5 years to write a short film, and now we've got you to write a feature film, and I'm working away on that to edit it a little bit more just to get it into the proper. And I can see in the script that you've written, there's a novel. In fact, it's more written like a novel than it is a screenplay, which is lovely because it won't take too much to enhance that. And the language, and we may have used the word flowery, but it's not. It's descriptive. It opens up a world of imagination and visualization, which I think is really, a novel would give it its place in your writing, because a film script, the unfortunate thing about a film script is that once it's translated into film, it's then the movie, and the script writers tends to get forgotten. Whereas I think there's something in there that you need to develop that further, It's 129 pages at the moment. It wouldn't take too much just to add a little extra to turn it into a novella or something like that. And that would be something that should be published. And the other thing is also, it would need a piece of artwork to go on the front cover. Maybe that's something you should be thinking about, within what inspires you visually, do you think? Because you are very good with setting things up. And I know when we've been doing graphics, you've been very easy to sort of shape things.
Mm.
What is it is there anything that sort of, are there any ideas that, even just quick ones, that might inspire the initial painting?
Well, the strange thing is what's happened in the last little while is tools have changed. And
Yeah.
before you were saying, I'm looking for 52 art. Oh, no, this is not an either or. In a scenario whereby if we build this template, it's a framework. The 52 I want to build it to be a tool set that is not an end in itself, but rather the beginning of a journey of meeting and greeting others. And there could be 52 artists and artist works on it. There could be 52 subject matters. Oh, each year is a different subject. It could be that it's just an installation and it's a project for today. It's just somewhere to hang stuff. It could be clothes. It could be records. It could be paintings. The whole point is it can have all these options given that it comes into existence, where before it could be this, it could be that, it could be the other, but there was no where, when, or why, or urgency about it. But now I'm seeing if we just bring it one step out into the real world, others can understand it more than we like to talk in the visual, and we can picture very, very fast what the end products will look like while we're still working in ideation. Whereas I think we might actually lose an awful lot of other people whereby they're coming from the seeing is believing set, and don't be that's where
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was always talking about. Now we're seen to be do it, and I know if we start to be seen to be do other things, then others will fill in the gaps.
Well,
Help us fill in the gaps.
yeah, no, I know one. So one of the things I was doing
Mm.
was I went and made this tray. This tray, I'd seen visually somewhere else.
And for all those on podcast space, George is holding
Oh,
up.
no, well, yeah, actually, I'm holding up what they call a rosary tray, and it's
Right.
it's made in 3D. It's got four sets of decades. It's got the Our Father prayer
What? How
thing
many
and a few other
numbers?
bits.
How many beads are on it? Just curiosity.
There is 59.
Oh, it's going to go. Maybe I'd be
I
absolutely
know.
mad if it was 52.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, no, don't. Well, actually, but there's the interesting thing, because if you were 52 and we're 5 years, that's 57. We've got 2 more years.
No, boy, I'm 57 now. That's exactly the
57, yeah,
weird thing. I've been talking about it for 5 years.
absolutely.
But there is evidence along the way. But now it's just there is an urgency of our time on this planet left. And I know you mentioned novella this and
Yeah,
such that, and I'd love to do all of the above. And maybe we will at different times and places. But now is the urgency about the right thing in the right order to do most
yes,
empowerment going
yes.
forward, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, I'm just going to go back, because we'll close up what I'm about to talk about, because I know that's an area that you don't want to go into. But what is really important is the fact that I produced a number of little tools using a 3D printer. One was the rosary tray, one was an actual tool for creating a knot. And in the last few days, I've actually created three rosary beads, just because I'm a deacon. But there is a creativity that's going on, because it's trying to get the knots and fighting with knots. That was, it took me 4 hours to do the first one, because I spent 2.5 hours trying to finish the last knot, right? It caused me frustrations. And then it started to move on. But the interesting thing is that I'm now able to use that, and I'm inspiring people by showing them what I'm doing. I'm doing exactly what you've done, but I've put it out there, and I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just sitting down, and maybe TV's on, and I'm just creating something very quickly. And I know when we come to do the uh, storyboards for the films, I'm doing the same thing. I actually go blank. I'm doing your blank canvas, right? And I'm not fearing the snowman in the snowfield in the
Yeah,
snowstorm that's in front of me. I'm actually kind of going, what happens if I do this, and
yeah,
maybe just hit it with something. But one of the things that's interesting is I'm inspiring other people who now want to make rosaries. You're inspiring other people by making films. We're both doing that through the filmmaking process, who want to come on and do these films. And I think the artwork is also interesting, because we're going out and we're starting to create things. Now, I mentioned at the end of June this year, I'm going on a photo walk with a group of people. we're all going to go out and use film cameras, and it's all about light. Now, this is quite fascinating because anybody that sees the podcast as a visual that we're doing today instead of just the audio, one of the things I had to get Garvin to do was to go and close some window
Shutters, yeah.
shutters to reduce some of the light behind him. And what I had to do before I could start doing this was to put some plastic bags over my windows because there was too much light coming in to bleach out my face. Technically speaking, in those two operations, we were both working with light. We were painting with light because we were trying to paint our pictures, our images, to make sure we got the right look. And again, when we come to do paintings, and the paintings that Garvin talked about that were in ND are fairly realistic looking poses of dancers, which always fascinated me because I loved figure work. And in fact, one of the things that you'll see if you're watching on the video is I have a couple of figures here, which are male and female, and they happen to be posable so that I can do as one's just fallen over. But they're posable so that I can actually do my storyboards very, very quickly without having any other reference in front of me. This one's totally fallen over. But the thing is that you can light them in such a way, and it's playing with light, painting with light. So paintings are really painting with light, which is what cinematography is. And I think that in our next film, whichever one we do, we are going to be doing more painting with light because I think by you exploring the paintings, however it comes out, you'll be wanting to play with that light, and
And
that
it
will
may not
actually
be
take
painted.
into the
That's
film.
the strange thing is like you've used the word a few times there, which is the storyboards. And I'm thinking they're not paint. I said that's an output. We're going, no, these are exactly that now. They're going to be 52 7 foot high storyboards.
Yeah.
Because whatever is going to be on them, there's going to be a story about the output, the story about how it was arrived at, the story of who was involved in it. And it may just be yourselves in that journey and or a few others, or it could be an awful lot of people we don't know yet. But it doesn't matter. But the weird thing is it was a call to action to go on a journey to explore. Even the subject matter of this conversation for this podcast was it has ignited a story. Even the chap down the road said the paint of those bigger paintings it ignited the believability factor even with him. I think because I mentioned to him before, and he's going, yeah, I sort of know, but it's seeing is believing.
Yeah.
Now I know in religion, it's probably if you ever get to see and believe, you'll definitely believe if you see, but to believe without seeing is a whole other story. But that was the weird scenario. There is, I was believing without seeing because but others need to see to believe in terms of what we're talking about, in terms of action, in terms of doing.
Well, there's a spiritual element to what we're talking about because I'm reading something about Saint Faustina who saw the Divine Mercy thing. She was constantly talking about seeing, okay, Jesus, and she was the one with the rays coming out, but somebody else saw the rays but didn't see Jesus. But she was internalizing seeing things and basically manifesting them in her writings. And as an artist, one of the things I found was that we effectively are like pencils. The pencil doesn't do anything. It's a piece of lead with a piece of wood wrapped around it. When the artist picks it up and starts to do something with it, it creates images, it creates art. And those ideas come from within. So it technically comes from your heart. It's what drives and motivates you. It gives you that love of doing something, that gives you that sense of, I've got to get this out. And I know from my experience of artwork over the years, you always feel that what the image is that's coming out is inferior to the one that you saw inside. And it's always that struggle to try and, how do I get it to look like what I saw? Because there was something there and I want to get it out there so other people can see it, but I believe in that image. I believe it will be a real thing. So when you actually see the white canvas and you start to see it as well, what's going to go on there? I mean, you then start to look at shapes that start to form in there, and you start to then copy them out and that's the idea of rendering. It's like the 3D rendering where it creates that model. You basically are rendering it out so that you're pulling that image out of that canvas, which is where one of the things I used to do when I was a youngster in the pubs, I used to look at wood and the knots in the wood, and you'd see faces, and I would sketch those out. and it would start getting me into the use of sketching things and applying different colors and things and seeing how the light hit certain things in a certain angle. I mean, the image of Garvin at the moment, he's got the light behind him, which is creating a kind of halo type shape, which is
I
actually quite,
won't even start going there now in the
yeah,
possibilities of angel on my shoulder or in my
Ames on the
pocket or
shoulder.
on
Oh
my
yeah,
back.
oh, there, yeah,
Yeah,
there's
but
another one.
no, strangely enough, there's a new retreat up the road, and that it's run by this. I think it's called the Sanctuary, but this lady would be famous for writing a book. I think it's about angels and maybe in her pocket or so. I don't know. She sees angels, which is great.
Yeah,
But what it is what weird synchronicity is the retreat's name, one that's coming up, is about near death experiences.
experiences. Oh
And
wow,
that was our first film.
yeah,
Now, I mean, I wasn't going to start sending her up the link to go, here's a film, because what it was in there is might not be aligned totally with that. But
yeah.
we were saying that film was more to strike a chord with conversations further around the beginning, during, and after. And is he in heaven? Is he in hell? Is he in purgatory? Is he there at all? Are we in the Matrix?
Yeah,
But there's an awful lot of in physics now happening on a couple of things I'm watching that they're starting to, with quantum, computing, start to show there is a potential using our own maths against us and quantum computing power to show we are in a simulation. Which is, again, I won't even go into that conversation, or
well, no,
maybe we will.
I think that's interesting because I mean, one of the things that I mean, we've spoke about parallel universes in previous
Mm.
podcasts, which is what you're actually talking about. Because if it's a simulation, then there's the possibility of being something somewhere else. But there's nothing alien,
Yeah.
even in that. There's nothing alien about that within Bible context or religious context, any religion that you're actually thinking about. The Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, they see effectively other multiple universes because they have to, because we're in the physical one and there's a spiritual one. So there's
Yeah.
two straight away. And again, if on this planet we're seeing things done in a certain way, there's the possibility in other planets it's being done in a slightly different way, even though it may all be interconnected. And because this physical world is seen to be a sense of a trial. We've done this in our podcast. We've done this in our films in the way that we're working. We prototype things and learn from the mistakes that were made, and then develop it further on. Again, with that rosary sort of board, I was having problems with it rendering out. It wasn't rendering properly, and I was having to talk to my son, who was a bit more expert in it, to work out how to get the settings right and to get it level. And then I was starting to get, but it's all about practice. It's all about putting it into practice, testing it out, see what went wrong, reflecting upon that, and seeing where we actually go with it. So that idea of the parallel universes, and from the near-death experiences that you can see on YouTube, they are talking about all these different worlds and experiences they have. A lot of them are very, very similar. One is that they get to see past loved ones, which is coming up in my little film Visitors at some point. And then they get led on to Jesus or the judge, to weigh up what they've actually done. But the great thing is that there's also stuff that talks about what lies in the future. Because one of the near-death experiences that someone talked about was that you get a chance to do those things that you really wanted to do here but never got a chance to.
Now, I'm going to stop
Also
you for a second
interesting.
and go, there's an interesting thing. Given we
Yeah,
might have forgotten past lives, this might actually be a second time round, and we're getting the chance to do those things. That comes back to what you were saying earlier. I'm putting a fire under myself to
yeah,
put a certain level of urgency, given them 57 years into this particular turnaround, or if it's a one chance dance and this is it, and I'm nearly 60 years in, and if I'm very lucky to live till 90, if I'm not cloned or cryogenically frozen, then I've got a third left, or I've got X fraction left of meaningful time where you're able physically and maybe mentally to put into practice what it is your purpose is on this planet to do. So there's no time anymore to be talking about stuff other than we're having good
yes.
conversations. Where if any of that stuff is meant to come into being, there's an urgency to be doing it.
Well, the lovely thing is that you're talking about a purpose. There's a lot of people who find that they've lost purpose. They can't see what their purpose in life is, and they seem to be suffering because of it, and they seem to be getting depressed. But once you start to realize, well, actually, what would I like to do? What are my goals? What would I like to achieve? And I suppose ambitions as well. But even that simple thought of if I can take this next little step, because we talked about, somebody said about the elephant, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
That's it. And
Which is
then,
really, really lovely, because I think we discussed that before.
yeah.
But the thing is that if it's it's getting the courage to take that first step. Don't worry about making mistakes, because you can learn from those mistakes when things go wrong, because you can test it out and keep modeling it and working it. And I think that becomes a really important part of the journey that we all are on. But having that purpose, if we consider, you said about past lives. Now, we're not necessarily talking about reincarnation at this point. We're talking about past lives or chapters of our current life, because that's important, because we tend to get stereotyped very early on through what the school system does with us, that we start to believe that we can't do other things. And then when a chapter comes to an end, we kind of seem to think that all I can do is what I've spent the last 20 or 30 years to do, and other people try and push you into that. But when you can break away from that and start to believe, well, I can do anything that I put my mind to. Yes, it will take time, but if I'm prepared to put that effort into it, I can actually accumulate some results at the end. It can be a bit of a suffering, but that's okay, because the journey getting there is quite often better than the thing at the end when you
That's
finish
it.
it, because then you want to go off and do it. Getting there doesn't really, it doesn't bring the rewards that you want, as it gives you a kind of strange sense. But the journey of enjoyment of doing, of putting something together, or working, as Garvin and I have been for the last 5 years, with somebody else. So you're sharing that journey with somebody. That's an important part. If you go off on your own, then that becomes a very lonely one. We're social beings. And what the purpose of all the artwork we're doing is to generate conversation, so other people can feel as though they can get into it and explore ideas they never had a chance to before.
Oh, you've touched the. As I was listening to you there, if it was my normal myself, I would have jumped in and said exactly what you were about to say, because that's the natural thing that wants to be said, which is the I needs to be a we.
Yeah.
Because if we're a social animal, then no, I'm quite happy talking to myself at the best of times, very, very comfortable in my own skin. I'm probably a multi-schizophrenic, so there's a good conversation going on at the best
Lots
of
of parallel
times.
universes
Yeah,
there.
but that's it. And most of it's in, whether it be external or in your head, there's the other universe. You're inside your head as the universe, external, looking outwards. There's that one. Get yourself a telescope and look further. There's something further out there again. So you got, but there's no point in, what's far away, it might as well not exist in sometimes, other than, you can dream it, you can believe it, but you can't really interact with it. And if we're social animals, what I found, even just walking down the bottom of the road and talking with that artist, Sid, and congratulating him on his work, and even letting it slip that, no, I had this idea, but then his work helped better define mine, in the sense of I was going 10 foot high and this, but he was saying there's this natural scale to things that looks right, feels right. If you went 8x4, it's too symmetrical. So it's not 7x4 works better.
Yeah.
And therefore, even that little, the 7 foot tall had scale where 5 and 4 to me didn't. So there was enough of a scale, but then to multiply it to make it, in my mind, I'm trying to make it unwieldy to him, because he's got 5 of these things, and it's a massive amount of work effort he put in to paint and do this work on them. And I'm going, I want to make it that someone has a conversation about it, going, you're mad. There's a scale to that. There's 52. Why? Because there's 52 cars in a deck. There's 52 weeks in a year. There's maths in the 52. Actually, 52 is 42 plus 10, and 10 is 1 and 0, and that is actually the ones and zeros of digitization. 42 is the meaning of life, and 1 and 0 is the definition of all things digital. And out of together, you come back to 52. Now, you can always come up with numbers and make them make sense. But I'm trying to make sometimes it's the nonsense is the fun. Sense, I like things to be nonsensical and then bring them to sense, and not to be sensible, but more, because if they were sensible, there's no fun, and you're nearly at a functional level. Whereas creative, I went to an exhibition over the weekend, which brings me back to this child. I know an awful lot of artists I know talk about the journey to childlike wonder. And when I start to see the work there, that they could be fine artists then, but do what looks effectively like finger painting and colouring in, then I realised I never left the childlike wonder. I am that person I've always been. I've never matured through the middle of the game. On that basis, I have the childlike wonder vision. I might as well get on and do the art, and we
Well,
don't.
yeah, and be done with it. And now there's a couple of things there that come out of what you've just now said. One is the child within, and one of the things that does seem to become clearer is if you can remain childlike as you get older, your mind is open to possibilities. It's only when you effectively become old that it turns into a rock because you no longer have that way of maneuvering.
Malleability
Yeah,
or
that malleability, and it's that kind of neuro linguistic thing that we've talked about. The neuro, well, there's a thing,
NLP. It's a reprogram
NLP.
those paths.
Yes, and I think that becomes so if you can remain young in your thinking, there's a dexterity to what you can actually do and how you apply that. The other thing is, and I think this is something that we can work on a little bit because I mean, yesterday I was working on your script and I was going through, it was taking ages to get through, but I knew that if I just had to keep going, I had to keep going. I'm about
that
a
bad.
third of the
Oh, good, good.
yeah. Well, no, no,
Yeah.
no. But the what I was trying to do was as the you've written a certain way, and I have to interpret it as a filmmaker. So what I'm trying to do is to take out the bits where it's implying what's in the mind and work out, well, what is being done? How is that being expressed externally so that we can film that? And that's again, that's maybe being functional, but that's important because unless we do that, there will be confusion in whoever reads it from a script perspective. It's brilliant as a piece of prose, but not as a script, because we need to identify all the parts and component bits and how we break that down. The other thing is the actors need to know how to act. They need to know, well, what is their objectives? And we're talking about objectives in this story. But one of the other things is that you created 52 boards. You've created something that you said could be overwhelming to other artists, but also it could be overwhelming for you because there is a functionality that you then have to execute to make those become realized, to render them, to make them visible so other people can see it. And that's also what we've been trying to do with the filmmaking, because that aspect of it takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of patience, and you can be very, very frustrated in the journey that you're on because it is the functionality can be boring and it
Yeah.
can be as boring as hell, and you want to run away because you want to do more exciting things because you see other people playing around in the park and doing stuff that you can't do, but you've got to work at this thing, and you've invested so much time that if you don't put that effort into making it unfortunately functional, you won't have something for other people to work to see and talk about at the other end. And I think that's the real investment that we're doing. And I
Now,
think,
strangely, sorry for cutting across.
yeah,
It's
no, I think
strangely
it's
enough.
important.
There
Yeah,
was, I don't know. Again, I'm probably subliminally picking up some various social media messaging from various sources. Don't know which platform. Don't really care. But in terms of what sticks in your mind and resonates, is sometimes you have to make a dream big enough to believe yourself to go on the journey and invest in time
yeah,
and effort into. Because if you start doing all these smaller, minor things, they might move you along, but they're not major enough for others to go on the journey. They
yeah.
got to, so as we go get momentum with something, people want to be involved and being part of that journey and go on the journey with you. But it has to be worthy of your time and their time because it's a good enough and big enough story. And therefore, what I was really seeing this is the scale is a language. That's why I keep on saying to everyone, it doesn't matter what's on these boards yet, because what I'm making it is of a size that is frightening to some and not to others. And then others will start to be, I want to be part of that story and journey because it challenges me, but I believe I can input to it. If that makes
Yeah, no, and I think that's actually quite crucial because I think we're reaching a stage in the world at the moment, especially with AI, because I was watching a documentary yesterday, how the AI is now getting to the point where it can have a conversation with you and you would not think you were talking to AI, you would thought you were talking to a real person. So a lot of the technology is taken away from the human beings, some of the creative processes that we've all been involved with. and there's a hunger now, I think, to get back to what was
Real
called
world.
analog, real world stuff, which is
Mm.
why film photography is going back, taking off, and people want to get out there and process stuff. Why they want that sort of hands-on expression of using their body to create artwork that isn't digital, that hasn't been taken away from them. So there is going to be, I think, a wave of people wanting to know how to explore the painting, the music, not using digital stuff, but using real instruments to try and create sounds and doing something collectively, as in a band or a little orchestra, to try and, yeah, it may not be brilliant, but I know. So in church on Sunday, there was a 10 or a 12-year-old girl playing the violin. It wasn't brilliant, but she was there in front of an audience. She was playing her stuff. And the courage it took her to actually stand up, especially at that age, I know what it's like for me to play my violin in front, was immense. And again, the thing is that the effort that they're putting in to do that, we will be doing the same thing. We will be like the 12-year-olds or the 3-year-olds who are exploring artwork for the first time and have that kind of, I want to do this, I want this color. It doesn't have to make sense to them, but they just want to explore colors and shapes and all those sort of things within the canvases that they have. And I think we need to be showing people in their 52s to 59s to 50s and 60s exactly the same thing, that they have that capability. And again, you're talking about, what is it, the 8x4s or whatever
Oh,
size?
it's a total language of construction. Two B4s and three B4. This is actually 7x4, which is feet and
Seven
not
by four.
metric.
Yeah,
Seven.
that's 28.
Yeah.
Isn't
Now,
it?
is there a magic number in there again? I don't know. You
Yeah,
might know.
seven's good. And I think seven's a magic number. You got four there as well.
Well,
And 28, well, 28's passionate because that's my birthday.
oh,
So
we always find meaning in certain things. No, great
28
thing about what
is
you were
always
talking
something,
about
yeah.
again was it's when I heard of the machine and what's going on out there in terms of social media. And see, if you think of social media as more the matrix, the machine that ticks and bells and whistles, that it's sucking life out of you into this funnel of
Yeah.
pressing buttons and participating with a device and that's looking. You have to be looking through a phone or a device, and you might be consuming a visual something or a song or whatever, but you're giving of your time, most valuable, precious thing of time, to pressing likes and negative, maybe not so much
Yeah.
likes
Yeah.
as derogatory comments and negatives. But other than that, you're not. If you're there, you're not out somewhere else doing creation. You are consuming, not creating. You're not only consuming, you're consuming of your time in this entity that doesn't actually really exist and doesn't add any or create any more, but consumes at a very high speed the most valuable thing. But what came out there again was we're going off on this journey, and most of the time, that girl, she's up there, giving her all and enjoying her music. Now, there could be critics in the audience, and if any of those voice out, that will, bring this person down, depending on how strong they are.
Yeah.
But we are, what has probably stopped me and most people, I think, is this fear of the unknown critic that will not validate their work. So they can then take permission from this unknown to continue that it's all right and good enough to be out there. Where we remove that, which is what we're doing, because what we're going to say is we've got 52 blank canvases, or we have X amount of blank storyboards that we're going to do our stories and our films on our paintings or whatever it happens to be. And the error is we don't know, it's not just me and you, there's a wide error in there of the unknown someone else that wants to go
Yeah.
on that similar journey. And what we're saying is this is a permission space to ignore the critics, and including the worst critic being yourself, to go just do and bring something into existence and then forget about it. Let it go. To let it go is probably the most important part of it. And don't worry what others say, because what I want to say here is this is what we are doing. What are you doing? If all you're doing is criticizing what
Yeah.
others are doing, well, then that's a broken you. It's not a broken us.
And you were talking about consumption, consumer consumption. And one of the things is that all this stuff, all this tech is consuming the individual and robbing them of the time that they have on this planet. But one of the great things is, well, we're being told that we haven't got time to do certain things. A lot of people are being pressurized to do multiple things, and there's not anything realistic. And I was having a session with someone the other day. I think it was my supervisor, and they were saying that there's perceived time and real time. And the difficulty is most people's perception of time and what you can do within the day you have is totally wrong. And the real time, and we don't value what we've actually done, but the real time is what you actually are doing, and we need to be looking at what we do within that real time. So, I mean, this morning you went out and you got 52 canvases organized in some. That was real time work that was necessary to push the thing into the next part of the process. Again, last night I spent about 4 or 5 hours working on what was probably around about 20 pages of script. And that was real time, but it was valuable. I had to stop after a while because I was getting exhausted. I need to, you have to realize that you've got to control those breaks. But it's not that it should be rushed. That I enjoy that process, but there comes a point where I need to stop because I'm tired and what I'm doing may mess things up. So I went off and did another activity, which is making a rosary. But that in itself meant I didn't have to think in quite the same way. But physically doing stuff like doing the garden, you were talking about doing your gardening, actually going out and doing something and just relaxing and giving yourself permission to spend the next few hours to do that is really important. I want to go out for walks because I want to use my cameras. And I'm not probably giving myself enough permission to do that. And I need to. It's not wasted time. And I think that's something, this idea of that we've all got to be productive and how someone defines our productivity is a lie in many ways, I think, because we're not appreciating what we're doing and how we're doing it for others. And because the way we're working, we tend to now overthink how much we need to do for everybody else and take on too much and then get burnt out because we can't deliver everything that's expected of us because it's impossible to do that anyway. And we're being pushed by these AI systems to go faster, faster, faster. And everybody will be burnt out. I think with the journey that we're on with the filmmaking and with those paintings is to give people a chance. They're retreats to give them permission to say it's okay for this next however many hours that we've got, 40, 50 hours if it's a normal day. Yeah, 40, 50 hours in the week to do something and then relax and take the breaks and have the conversations with other people around you to see what ideas they come up. That's how we generate ideas. It's bouncing conversation backwards and forwards. There are no bad ideas. There's no bad execution. It may not be perfect to one person's perspective, but from another person's perspective, having the courage to actually let that go is really important. And we talked about the 12-year-old that was playing the violin. I remember teaching an art group of they call them JTP, young training program that the 16-year-olds were put on years and years ago. And there's a pregnant girl in there. She'd done a piece of artwork and she'd gone home because she wasn't feeling well. But it'd taken her ages to execute that piece of artwork, to actually put herself on that piece of paper. And somebody went and destroyed it. So to keep her morale right, what I decided to do was to recreate her piece of artwork exactly. And so when she came back in, as far as she was concerned, she was carrying on with what she was doing, and that was important because otherwise she would have been broken even more, and especially as at that point, there's a spider here, 16-year-old who's finding themselves pregnant, wondering what the world's all about. The last thing she needed is someone to effectively destroy her piece of work. And we've got to think that carefully with all the people that we're working with, because you can bring people down psychologically so easily just by saying the wrong word. It's so easy to criticize somebody else if you're jealous about what they're doing. It's actually harder to say, do you know what? You've done a really good job. Well done, you. And take the win. We've been saying that with all the things that we've been doing with the film festivals. Take the win. It doesn't matter. It's just been selected. It's a semi-finalist. It's a quarter-finalist. Take the win. Take the praise because there's plenty of other things out there to knock you. And you need to enjoy the fact that, yeah, we did something and there's a reward for that thing there.
Now, interestingly enough, I think in the past, my being an accountant, or that's a strange thing. I was maybe talking to someone lately going, Garvin the accountant, Garvin the artist, Garvin the filmmaker. And what these second parts of the sentence is accountant, filmmaker, art That's not Garvin. Garvin's Garvin. They're just functions.
Yeah.
And therefore, when people, someone was talking about, again, on social media, potentially, it was robbing my time and informing me and entertaining me, that when someone asks you, like, who you are, and you go, it's not what people react going, I'm an accountant. That you name the functionality,
Yeah.
as opposed to go, hi, I'm Garvin. And then you might talk about, you don't need to go into go, I do this, I do that, don't the other. It's it's who are you as opposed to what do you do.
Yeah.
And therefore, because the what you do can change, and therefore, don't measure yourself by I am an accountant. I've never been an accountant. I just happen to be one for a point in time of a functional level of something to pay a bill off. But I don't think I know. No, so I don't think I know 110%. I was never an accountant, and there's nothing wrong with it as a job and as a function and it pays bills. But it wasn't Garvin. And I think, so I know me, myself, and I, Garvin, who are you? Well, I'm Garvin. And well, maybe the next question might have been, what's your story? And then the story is a journey, as you said, well, we know what one of the destinations is, but on the way to that destination, you've got many a road to travel and a many a place to visit and a many a friend to meet. And therefore, that's the journey I'm journeying. And Garvin is on a journey of meeting other like-minded people that want to go on similar journeys at different points in times that might stop and start at different bus stops along the way. But now it's in the journey, that comfortableness is now in the fact that if you have an idea, there's it's like you using your language, there's now callings happening to me whereby items and ideas are calling to become real. And it's this journey to making real the stories. I think I'm looking forward to being on that journey with these other we's and I's and teams and so on.
That's brilliant. Actually, one of the great insights that you've just given me there is really your sense of recoiling from that word function. Because the problem I think we all have is that we are defined by how people think they can exploit us through the functions they think we can do. And I think that probably embodies my frustration because everybody's tried to define me as, oh, George, you want to do too many things. I kind of go, no. I see collectively how those all come together to create the end result that I'm actually looking for. And they kind of, well, you need to define whether you want to be an editor, a sound person, cameraman, and I kind of go, well, but I know how all those function. I just need them to come together to do this project. And I was prohibited from doing what I wanted to do because everybody just saw me as an editor. Oh, you're an editor. You're a strange person because you work in the dark, editing away on the little films and things like that. But what they didn't realize was that there's a lot of creativity. It's the same as a writer because you're writing something as an editor. So there is, I think, lots of people have been defined and been told what they are. But in a way, that's a form of binding. It's a shackle to them that prevents them from fully exploiting their full potential of who they could be and should be, and discovering, which I think we've talked about in this episode, their purpose. You're trying to define your purpose in life and what's it all about, Alfie, and all that, because it's really important that that you fulfill that purpose. And I think that's what all of us are trying to do. That's definitely my drive, is to try and find out what's my purpose. How am I, one, it's how am I helping other people? How can I contribute to society in some form? How can I give something back without being basically totally exploited? Because that's also another area of fear. And again, it's also indicating that how we talk about ourselves becomes an important part, how we treat ourselves. And I think in the last few years, I've been treating myself far better than I was in the past because we talked about that critic, the one that's worse than everybody else. And it tends to be that one that's inside you that will actually sabotage all your efforts and totally undermine you because of a fear of achieving something. And a lot of people's fear is don't go out and do that because you'll fail. And you kind of go, well, actually, it's through the failing, through the mistakes that we learn. And I think that's something that's really important. And we keep that's where wisdom eventually comes from as well, because we learn from that process. So again, yeah, so in a way, I know you've been talking about me being functional. I can now understand a lot better from what you've just now said why you don't like being defined in a functional way, because it is a prohibiting thing. And we've had that experience with some of the people who've gone off to who want to be producers. All they want to do is to peg us into this box of how we can function for them without them realizing what our capabilities are and how we can actually enhance something if we're allowed to be the creatives we are. Now we don't need to take permission from other people. Now we're old enough and wise enough, being over 52, to be able to make decisions and actually say, do you know what? Actually, that decision's a good decision, and that's okay to go with that one. It may not be perfect to other people's way of looking at it, but it'll actually move me along the journey that I feel that I'm being asked to go along. And we could be, and we are, going against the flow, going against the current that everybody else is doing. And yes, it's taking us a bit more time because we're having to work things in a certain way. But if we keep on and have the stamina to do it, we will achieve the goals that we're after.
You just reminded me of one of those very, very famous old sayings, which is take the path less traveled by
Yeah.
and don't go with the flow. The flow is just you're following. Much nothing wrong with it, but you're not changing. Unless you're at the beginning and everyone else is following and you're beating the path through the promised land of sort. Fine, you're showing the way. But that bunch are following and someone is showing the way. You can join the crowd or you can make your own way. And we're making our own way, and we're beating the new path, and we're not following others where they go. We may do at different points in time different things, but in the meantime, it's a bit more exciting. It's to go on this little bit more unknown journey with our functional skill set to beat a path way for others. And I think that's why I'm starting to. That then sets us apart. That we're not just following the crowd, and therefore we're making our way. We're making our own way through the madness and the mayhem. And as we go, we're probably helping make a pathway for others.
I think one of the things I'm using the word think, which I shouldn't be, because quite often we're following what our head says should be doing, which reasons things through. But quite often in a lot of the literature I'm reading at the moment, it's about what's in your heart. What do you love? And if your heart's empty, it's because you're lacking that love that you're giving yourself. From a Christian perspective, you're lacking Jesus. But if you have that love within you and you fill your heart up with that love, and it takes you on a path that is separate from everybody else, because other people are being, what we're seeing around us is a lot of people whose lives are becoming emptier and emptier and emptier. They're not satisfied with things. The way the marketing tends to work is, well, once you've got one camera, 3 months later, it's defunct. Once you've got one car, now it's out of date. We're being told that we need to be dissatisfied with everything. Who's leading us in that journey? If we can follow the other voice that's in us, the other one that's in our heart that's driving us forward, and have the courage to explore what it's asking us to do, quite often we'll be more satisfied by where that's leading us than where the other side, because everybody else is, their lives literally is turning into hell. And it's they're being burnt up by all these things that are, you know, that are really destructive. I was actually burning something yesterday with burnt my fingers trying to use a flame. But in the beginning of this conversation, Garvin was saying that there was a fire inside him and it was driving him forward. We just had Pentecost really, and that's where the flame came onto all the disciples. That fire is what we need to be looking at and driving us forward. That passion that we have. Yes, a passion can be hard work and a struggle, but if you've got a vision of where that passion is taking you and you follow that through, the rewards will come through that end of that journey. They may not be monetary, but that sense of purpose, that sense of well-being, that sense of I've done what I needed to do while I've been on this planet becomes fulfilled, I think.
Now, there's the thing. I think the new title for Garvin is Garvin the Fire Starter.
Garvin,
No, it's not. I don't think it's Carrie the movie, but
no, no.
more to put a put a fire under ourselves and or others around us to basically break the ropes of the past to give them permission to move forward, include and most of all by giving the example of ourselves. It's to put a fire under us to ignite that passion,
Yeah.
to get that, to get the love of something to do, and you put an urgency on it. And
Yeah.
that's and if that's not there, then we're functionally existing on a path of basically waiting to die, for want of
We're
a better word.
we're turning into machines, and a
Yeah.
machine, an automaton, is basically just a single function, and that's what the world wants us to be, is a single functioning operative that just does as they're told in a certain way. I don't think that's what we're meant to be here. Yeah, we are meant to follow certain rules and regulations and create order within the way that we move forward, because then by doing that, other people can see how to move forward on that journey. And again, like the frame has, is either a rectangle, well, it's 7 by 4. It's a lovely sort of shape, which I think is quite interesting. It'd be interesting to explore the divine dimensions within that, which painters used to use, because it'd be interesting if you take the 4 by 4, which creates the square, take the diagonal and see whether that turns out to be 7. That's something we'll actually explore afterwards, because that becomes the divine, and you create sort of spiral
The
shapes
golden
using
number.
that.
Yeah.
It's the golden number. It's the golden proportions. It's the same as apparently that golden number. If you squared this part of my hand, which I'm now demonstrating as opposed to talking, if you find the proportions to here is that, and the diagonal of whatever the proportions are, is what this works out, and that all goes through the whole human
Well, you're
body.
going back to the perfect maths of the universe and or
Yeah,
divine maths and the golden number and all the rest of it, which brings us back to earlier on being the simulation aspect of this set of maths and rules that exists
yeah.
within micro and macrocosm, worlds. And I think it was actually whatever I was watching was starting to talk about this. Actually, I was walking up here going, the unknown. We talked about the universe before and the plus one, the external observer, and the plus one could be God, and plus one could be ET on steroids, and it could be that the plus one is the player of the game, and the universe we're talking about is in this matrix game of quantum physics playing PlayStation 72. But it doesn't matter, because if you start getting caught up in that thinking, I think you'd go mad. You go around in circles, you'll go mad. But if we just pull it all back into, well, if I am just one player in this mad game and I have X lives or one life based on the rules I understand, then let's go off and play the game the best we can. And therefore, I'm turning up, I'm playing the game. I don't know what I'm going to win or lose, but I'm going to roll the dice.
I mean, the interesting thing about the game, playing the game, is that if we follow the rules and regulations, or whatever you like to call it, and a lot of people don't like rules and regulations because they find that it's defining, but it's not. We know that we can then work with other people, and that's an important integral part of this game. It's not to go as a solo player. It's to work with a team. It's how to pull groups of people in together and allow them to give them permission to do what they would like to do. And I think one of the things with team building is that if you respect the people you're working with, that they have something to contribute more than just a function, that they can actually bring ideas and help you shape things, and even challenge you with maybe some of the ways you're going, and we can appreciate that, then the end result becomes something even better. But we also need to give ourselves times to have the breaks that we need so that we can spend the times with our loved ones and share their lives. And again, the sharing of their lives is the conversation, it's the talk. It's what we've had a chance to do here today, is to talk things through. And by talking things through, things become possible that we never thought of or dreamt of before. And the nightmares go away because you've now got somebody else to bounce an idea off who can give you a different perspective and actually see that the possibilities are there, which you may not have had if you were on your own. So it is definitely a team activity. And I think that's a good thing. We probably need to come to a close of this session. We've had some really good things. Garvin's been fired up to do some exciting things that's keeping him going while we work on some of the other areas that take a little bit of time to get going. And I think I've talked about being fired up as well in the same kind of way. It is it, there's a word for it. It's how you pass things on. When you get fired up, the great thing about a flame is that when you pass it on to somebody else, you don't diminish the flame that's within you. You actually, that flame can be built up in the other person. And the more passionate they become, the more brighter that flame actually gets. So a flame is actually something that's lovely because you can share it around with other people and not lose it. You actually enhance other people by sharing that flame. And I think that's an important part of the process. We now have been talking about structures. The other thing is that functional thing. We are not a function. We are a body of lots of activities that like to explore things that's in the universe, because that's what Garvin's been talking about there, whether it's religious, whether it's universe, whether it's science, whether it's maths. There's such a wealth of stuff that we should be explored. And we should have childlike minds to go out and explore every single one of those things. And the more of a child mind you have to explore and open to all possibilities, the longer I think you have life. Because I think if you don't and you just stick with that functionality, your brain will just become like a rock and you'll be dead. And your heart will become a rock as well, and it will be dead. And that's where we need to move forward. So this has been a wonderful session. I wasn't sure where we were going to go, but I think we've explored some amazing things that actually has lit that fire under both of us to keep us going on the journey that we're going, because it can seem we can get discouraged and there are other things that can get in the way. And that's the reason why we need to keep on talking, because it keeps that passion going and we can move forward to reach that goal. So, well, I'm going to
I
say
love
thank you.
talking heads. I'm just reminded of, I think it's called Burning Down the House. Don't burn down the house. Now I'm actually thinking more of another band, and it's I Am a Fire Starter. And I'd rather go on that. I can't remember the band's name, but
Prodigy.
there you go. So be the prodigy going forward. Be a fire starter, but don't burn down the house.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Garvin, for the conversation. Actually, you've inspired me. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Thank you.